National Signing Day was yesterday. As you and I are talking Thursday night, National Signing Day was yesterday. It pales in comparison to what it once was because all that action has moved into December. Personally, I'd love if they scrap that and they go right back to the first Wednesday in February being the national holiday that it very much should be. But I was looking at some of the results here. Now that we have a bow on all these classes, Georgia finished number one again. And this is the 16th straight cycle an SEC team has finished number one. Georgia got 18 guys from the top 247. This is not an accident. It's just not an accident. They invest more in recruiting than anyone. They take it more seriously than just about anyone, although I know there's some other staffs out there working their tails off. But the thing I love about Georgia is, number one, they don't apologize for it. They don't try and nickel and dime their way to a number one recruiting class. They go spend. They invest. And I don't mean NIL. They're not dropping huge bags out there. In fact, they can underbid because they know playing for that Georgia logo, it's what the rest of you are having to overpay against. We don't have to overpay. We're Georgia, So they've got that going for them. But also, you can tell they've ascended into a little different layer of the atmosphere because this was kind of a ho-hum number one class. For instance, if Penn State landed the number one class in the country, it would be a massive story because you don't see Penn State land number one classes. Georgia's just kind of, all right, we landed another number one class. How's 25 looking? We got an early read on 26. That's just standard operating procedure. What about the state of Florida? So I'm always paying attention to Florida, the state. All three teams down there, Miami, Florida State, and Florida, all in the top 15. Hasn't always been that way. I am a huge believer that keeping in-state talent home in Florida is one of the keys to maintaining or injecting more competitive balance into college football. Miami was 4th, FSU 12th, Florida 14th. Miami really loaded up on the defensive line. Their top three guys are defensive linemen. And you got guys like Reuben Bain that came in the last class. So they got some monsters there. They are looking at Florida State down there at 12th, and you combine that with Florida State having the number 4 portal class. So like I said, they got Luke Kromenhoek, who is the future quarterback. They're bridging the gap between now and him with DJ coming in this year. So they have quarterback very, very much figured out, and now you hope it turns out like you want it to on paper. But they've got that solved, and more and more, they're recruiting guys that are going to be the nucleus foundation of the roster, but they will not forsake that transfer portal if they can backfill outgoing talent with really, really good talent already available. Florida, they were in the top 5 for some of this cycle. They ended up number 14, but they kept DJ Lagway, who is the number 3 quarterback there, number 3 overall. And that's a quarterback they had to have. It's a player they had to have. It was the crown jewel of the class. He was. I know there was some bumpiness down the stretch. If Lagway wasn't a part of that class, that was going to be the disaster. What about Texas and OU? Let's hurt some feelings here for just a second. Texas finishes with the number 6 class in the country. OU not too far behind at number 8. Texas, the 2 years prior, number 3 and number 5. OU, the 2 years prior, number 5 and number 8. The only schools in the SEC who can claim to be better than that are Georgia and Alabama. That's it. That's the end of the list. Outside of Georgia and Bama, no programs in the SEC have recruited at a higher level over the past 3 years than Texas and Oklahoma. LSU is the next closest. So again, I know it's very uncomfortable to hear this, but there is this very, very false notion that once OU and Texas walk into the SEC, they're in store for a rude awakening. They're going to be rude awakenings. I just think Texas and OU may deal some of them out. Because if you think that those two are walking in ill-equipped to compete in the SEC, you're crazy. They're averaging classes inside the top 7 or top 8 over the past 3 cycles. That's a roster. That's not a class. That's a roster. And then you combine that with what each one of them can do in the transfer portal. They have SEC rosters. They're walking into the conference with SEC rosters. It's not coming in here, learning your way around bumper car style, and then hopefully building towards a nice, solid 2028 season. They're going to be able to win in 2024. And it's going to come at the expense of some of you. I've spoken my piece. I'm keeping an eye on Jeremiah Smith, number one receiver in the country. He goes to Ohio State. Don't care who else they have on campus. That kid's a day one starter. I think Dylan Raiola is fascinating to watch. I think Nebraska picking up Raiola, that was one of the biggest stories of the cycle. They flipped him from Georgia. Why? Because he wanted to go there. Independent of what some broadcasters out there may have been alleged to assist with. What a joke that story has been over the past 48 hours. And so Dylan Raiola at Nebraska. Nebraska finished inside the top 20, by the way. And Cam Coleman, an alien receiver at Auburn. Auburn locking down a top 10 class very quietly. I think he's on the field immediately. And I think a lot of that Auburn class is on the field immediately. And you know why I think this? Because Tom Loy said so. Tom Loy, congrats. Another clap here to end the show. Congrats to Tom Loy. Elevating to the national recruiting team here. Highly suggest you follow him. A lot of good insight. Been in the game for a long time, and I'm always a fan once the cycle comes to a close of being around these guys, and a lot of them are here today. Ivins has been here. Cooper's been here. Tom Loy's been here. Brandon Huffman was here the other day. Of listening to basically sort of an undoing of the tie. And you lean back and you undo the cufflinks and roll up the sleeves a little bit and you exhale, and then you start to hear some stories. And there's always a catalog of stories that you build up through recruiting cycles, and it's always a treat to listen to that, because I'm not in the weeds day to day in recruiting, but they are. So congrats to Tom Loy, and I highly advise you follow his stuff. A lot of good stuff on 247sports.com right now about National Signing Day.